You're listening to the Digital Deep Dive, where we tackle the newest trends, strategies, and pain points shaping growth across the digital landscape. From Amazon and D2C to international expansion, join our host and e-commerce leaders across multiple industries for in-depth discussions on how to maximize your brands in the digital arena. Now, here's your host, Aaron Conant.
Well, hello, everybody, and welcome back to the Digital Deep Dive podcast. I'm your host, Aaron Conant, and here for another great conversation with an industry expert. And this one is a friend for a few years back now, Kiri Masters, now head of retail marketplace strategy at Acadia. Originally met her where she was the founder at Bobsled Marketing. A lot of you might know her from that. It seems like a predominantly Amazon-focused agency is where I had a lot of brands recommending her to me. And so I'd reached out a few years back and actually had the opportunity to be on her podcast a couple times, but just an all-around fantastic person, a Forbes contributor, and just super excited to have her on the podcast today. But Kiri, a little bit of background on yourself. Would love to hear how you got started in digital as a whole, and then we can kind of jump into the topics. And one of the main things I'd love to cover with you is retail media strategy. And what you see taking place is something that comes up all the times in the brand conversations I've had. But first, a little background, how'd you get into digital? Would love to hear that as a whole. And then the transition to Acadia and what you're doing there. Would love to hear it.
Sure. Yeah. So my career started out in banking, and I started a little e-commerce business on the side of my corporate banking job, and learned a little bit about Amazon along the way. So that was sort of 2012 to 2015, and learned about Amazon on the job doing this sort of side business, and realized, hey, that I actually know a little bit more about Amazon than my clients at the bank do, who were manufacturers. And so I found myself giving them free advice, alongside working on loan applications for them, and decided to hang out a shingle as a consultant to do that full time and leave my corporate job. So that's how I got started in the Amazon ecosystem. That was back in 2015. Things were very different back then. They've changed a lot. I've certainly been kept very busy over that time period. But along the way, I started to build a team of other consultants and experts, and eventually woke up to running a 60-person agency, and decided last year to join forces with Acadia, which is a digital marketing agency for challenger brands, and they've assembled a team of experts across SEO, paid media, organic social analytics, and web development. And when Acadia acquired Bobsled, that we became then the retail marketplaces and retail media arm of that company. So now we are working with mid to large and enterprise brands across all those different disciplines. And now I'm in Atlanta as well. That's the other thing. I've been all over the place over the last few years. I'm obviously Australian originally, but New York, South America, back to Australia, and now landing back in Atlanta in the Southeast, which is a new adventure for me personally.
That is awesome. And so, you'd mentioned, retail media, is that coming up a lot for you? Because it is in the brands, in the conversation that I'm having. And I'll give you kind of the background of what I'm seeing is, it's kind of funny that, everybody for the longest time was rooting for Walmart Media to get it all figured out, right? They had issues with the pricing on their auction for PPC. They had issues with, if you're below 120 in a search term, you couldn't bid. So new item launches were tough. And so what was interesting is a lot of the brands, and that was startup, the Fortune 100, were kind of frustrated with it because they wanted an alternative to Amazon. But what's interesting is Walmart started to figure those things out, right? And changing how their auction goes for PPC, removing that 120 threshold for where you go and search if you can bid on a search term for a new item. And now you are like, wait a minute, this means I should be investing money, right? For the longest time, they're like, oh, I can just dump money into Amazon. I can pretty much print it. At the same time, we had issues with iOS 14.5 over the past year, everybody hitting app not to track, Facebook attribution going away, Google third-party cookies are going to be going away. And so everything got a lot more complicated. The easy answer for the longest time was just dump it back into Amazon. But I just have a lot of brands at this point in time where their Amazon business is so big, they don't want to pour into it more. And yet everything has gotten so complicated. So how do you see brands dealing with Walmart? I think finally they might get it figured out on the paid media side. And then how does that go across, Target and Roundel and everything else? Would love to hear your thoughts.
Yeah. Well, there's two things. One is there's been these moments along the way where Walmart seems to finally deliver a feature or a requirement to brands that it's like, okay, now they're getting it. And I distinctly remember walking Etel West in January 2020, and they finally announced Walmart Fulfillment Services. And I was like, great, this is what Walmart really needs to access that mid-market, high volume third-party seller, because there wasn't a FBA equivalent on Walmart, and that was part of the challenges that a lot of brands had. And to be fair, not even just the mid-sized sellers, but really large CPG brands often, they don't have the capacity to ship eaches or even pack eaches, and so they were not able to use Walmart marketplace for that reason. But there's been these little sort of indications along the way that Walmart is really starting to crack the code and figure things out.
But really quick, is that interesting though? Because like Amazon's kind of laid it out there.
Yeah.
Right.
I mean, go figure. Like
it's not this giant mystery, right? It's like
I agree.
The game plan is there.
Yes.
Just execute it. Sorry.
Yes. And I mean, if anyone could go and copy Amazon's playbook, it's Walmart. Other marketplaces that are launching, like Albertsons is launching a marketplace. They're not going to go out and compete with Amazon on assortment. No one can compete with Amazon on assortment, except perhaps for Walmart. So it has been befuddling why these things have taken so long to materialize. One thing that you mentioned was the second price auction format. They are finally going to be launching that in 2022. But as some people have pointed out to me, it's not really going to be a true second price auction format. So there's still these things where it's like, okay, you're getting close, but still don't offer the same sort of stellar experience. And therefore, if the sellers are not there, the customers are not there, and they've really sort of missed a pretty significant opportunity to create a great selling proposition and bring more customers in that would actually start to fuel that flywheel. But like you said, it's really starting to get there in terms of being a compelling ad platform now.
So interesting that, so just for everybody who's listening, so the second price auction is, so Amazon is first. And so what that means is if I bid $1 and Kiri bids $2, she wins for $1 and a penny. In the second price auction, if I bid $1 and Kiri bids $2, she wins for $2. And that's where a lot of brands. That's the first price auction. What's that?
That's the first price auction. Second price auction is what you mentioned first, where you pay the second price. Yep. And so second price is what you want. Currently, Walmart has the first.
Which is where Amazon is at today. Sorry. Yes. Correct.
Yep.
And that's where a lot of brands got worked up, right? Mm-hmm. Was they thought they were dumping a lot of media in, and they were setting prices originally really high just to win a term. And then they realized like they're just blowing through budget.
Yeah. Yes, exactly. So it's, certainly been a challenge to get Walmart advertising to be anywhere near as the ROAS of Walmart, of Amazon, or even some of these other sort of more category specific platforms like Instacart. Instacart we see a great ROAS for. And so to go and then convince that same brand who's seeing good ROAS on Amazon, great ROAS on Instacart, and then we look at something comparable for Walmart, it's really has not been exciting for the longest time.
Do you think that's gonna change with some of the direction and the steps they've been taking.
Yes,
and the other
but I'm not
question
sure how quickly that's going to be. It's still, there still isn't a date for rolling out the second price auction. It's still not clear exactly what that looks like. So it's still not quite there in terms of being a comparable platform to Amazon. I will say that Walmart, what Walmart has as an advantage is requiring a certain amount of ad spend from some brands. They have to spend a certain amount on Walmart media, and that's created a bit of a lock-in effect. So the criticism there is that, look, they never had to be that good with their ad platform because brands were forced to spend the money anyway. So if you have to spend 2 or 3% of your COGS on media, you have to spend it. It didn't have to produce a great ROI. And so that's the criticism that Walmart gets a lot, is that they never really had to be very good at advertising. So they didn't really make it a super transparent system for brands that had a choice to spend there or not.
Do you have a breakdown, a budget of what you're seeing happen, Amazon to Walmart to Instacart to Target, like how brands are looking at it?
No, for us. So for us as an agency, it's going to be very dependent on the category and their sort of strategic needs. So we don't really have that sort of level of data that would be interesting to you. I think that like a advertising platform that covers all of those would have better data on that.
Okay. No, interesting, because I think one of the next episodes launches with the team from Sky. Used to be Ken Shu. So
yeah.
Another thing you mentioned is another one right after this is with fulfillment as a whole. Micro fulfillment centers are popping up all over the place, because you're right. Brands, large brands, they don't, even if they get to the point where they can individually pick, pack, ship, having that built into SAP and how to relieve inventory and how to have virtual warehouses and being able to actually have it executed upon is incredibly tough.
Yeah.
What changes do you see taking place in retail media? Like, what are you most excited about?
Yeah, so we just completed this big research project in May around retail media allocation, and it was a challenge that we heard from lots of brands. Was you've got a retail media network over here, you've got GoPuff launching theirs, you've got to our discussion earlier, Walmart is sort of becoming a little bit more interesting, and we want to get ahead of that. And so a lot of brands were really struggling with, how do we actually spread out our media spend across all of our different marketplaces and retailers that we sell to. Ulta just launched a retail media network. Sephora's apparently coming along the line with one too. So a lot of sort of confusion about how to do it now, and then even more like extrapolating out into the future, where a mid or large size brand is going to have half a dozen or even a dozen different retail media networks or channels to manage. The problem that we have of how much should Amazon get versus Walmart, that's going to be way more complex in the future. So we started to hear this conundrum from a lot of brands that we work with. So we looked at, okay, how are brands doing that today? What are the frameworks that they're using to allocate retail media out? Are those working? What's the temperature on that? And then what is a better way of doing this? And so what we found was, brands are allocating media budget in two main ways, which I'll explain in a second. They're not happy with it. It's very limited. It's backward looking. Both methods are backward looking. Both methods sort of put a cap on potential. And what we ultimately came up with as a thesis and sort of proved out through conversations with brands and folks in the industry was looking at allocating retail media out using the marketing funnel and the sort of the shopper journey. Each retail media platform or network has its own universe of ad options, ad campaign types, targeting options, things like that. And each of those ad types are suitable for a different stage of the marketing journey. So you've got on Amazon, let's say, lots of DSP ad types that are suitable for awareness building. You've got sponsored brand video, which is useful for consideration. And then at the bottom of the funnel, you've got sponsored products. And for loyalty and brand defense, you've got different ad types. So looking at all of the different platforms that you're using or considering using, they all have a universe, and each ad type can be kind of put into the stages of the marketing funnel. So instead of looking at all of your different ad platforms with all of the different ad types and getting very overwhelmed with how much of which ad type gets what part of my budget, instead we're really teaching folks to focus, to identify what stage of the funnel you're really going to focus on for that product set or brand. And then just focusing in on the ad types and targeting options that serve that stage of the funnel. Mm-hmm. So if you're looking to grow market share for a new product, new product in the market, you're going to be focused really most of your ad budget on that awareness stage of the marketing funnel, because no one knows about that product yet. You need to hit on the awareness before you're going to get anywhere. You're not going to get any bang for your buck if you're focused on bottom of the funnel or loyalty or brand defense, because no one's searching for it right now. And then conversely, if you've got a real profitability motive for a brand, that might be your cash cow, you might be managing to a certain contribution margin, then you want to be focused on the bottom of the funnel and getting, really tightening in on that ROAS. So I think once we launched that thesis out into the world a few weeks ago, we got a really great response. We got invited to Colgate-Palmolive's digital summit to present this model to their digital team, and have received a really good response to this. And at the core, it is really simple. It really is a simple concept that's going to help sort of bridge from where we are now with a fairly limited array of platforms out to the future, where we're going to have many, many more platforms, potentially a very confusing landscape for brands to operate. But coming back to this marketing funnel model, I think is going to really help brands separate out what is a distraction versus what is going to be a good investment for that product or brand based on its stage in its life cycle.
No, I love it. So, no, it's super interesting. So you can break it down, even not looking at, okay, this is everything Amazon has to offer. This is everything that Walmart has to offer. This is everything that Instacart has to offer. But saying, this is the product, this is what I'm doing, and this is the stage and brand awareness. And Amazon has these tools for brand awareness, and Walmart has these tools for brand awareness.
Yep.
And letting that guide a strategy, I think it's awesome.
It's simple, isn't it?
Yeah,
it's simple. When you explain it, it's like, well, of course, that makes a ton of sense. Yep.
But it also gives people a place to start, right? Like you said, like this will evolve over time, right? As all the platforms evolve over time and the requirements that different retailers have for you as a whole. But that's place to start of how to look at it rather than, I think you're right. I think you said that they're like, marketers are overwhelmed right now because the last 2 years, outside of everything being shifted to, digital, not everything, but a huge focus onto digital. And then, the third-party cookies going away, the iOS 14.5 updates, content that they're requiring has gone through the roof, and then, on top of it, retail media is exploding. And how do you simplify it, but in a way that makes complete sense? Like, awesome job.
Yeah, it's, it is simple.
How many people can I send your way to have this conversation, right? Because I'll get it like very high level, but
yeah, well, so just to call out, this was a collaboration with me and one of my colleagues at Acadia, Matteo Bizon. We worked on this together for the last few months and put this model together. I mean, in our world, in it for retail media, at Acadia, we're focused on Amazon, Walmart, Instacart, and Target. So that was when we looked at, okay, what's the funnel look like? We just looked at those ad types because that's really that's our bread and butter. But for a brand that might be a furniture brand, for example, you might just pick Amazon, Walmart, and Wayfair. Or if you're an apparel brand, the universe is going to look a little bit different. But that's also the beauty of it, is that it can be tailored to whatever retail media network you're talking about. Or even, I think that there still is an application to look at this with paid social, paid search on Google, et cetera, as well, because there's, again, like a universe of options there, and which segment of the marketing funnel do you want to be focused on for each product or brand. It still has a use case outside of retail media as well, I think.
Oh, I completely agree. I'm having more and more conversations around, even for Amazon, from that standpoint, that they're more of the Facebook, the Google, they're more of a platform, and view it that way. And as a way to explain to executive teams around like why Amazon doesn't, come to the table to negotiate, right? Why do they just randomly make changes? How come we can't adjust pricing? Well, Google and Facebook aren't doing it. Like, think about Amazon from that standpoint as more of a platform to promote your product that happens to sell it as well.
Yeah.
So I think it can be applied across the other platforms as well.
Yeah, absolutely. Mm-hmm.
Sorry if my head just exploded. That is awesome. No, because it's real. I mean, that's where I spend a lot of my time, right? It's just advising brands on pain points and strategy. And just over the past, I would say 4 to 5 months, retail media, especially with the announcements around, Walmart, not enacted yet, but just those announcements as a whole, people are scrambling to try to put it together. And, we're halfway through the year. That means we have 2 months before we're getting budgets set up for 2023 already.
Right.
And what is that going to look like, and how are we going to spend?
Yes.
Well,
and I kind of fast forwarded on that section, but the way we found most brands currently allocate their retail media budget is, one, with arbitrary metrics like ROAS, which I call a blunt instrument. ROAS is suitable for lower funnel performance metric only. And this is the hill that I will die on, honestly. Like I will need to say this 2,000 more times. But if you're wanting to grow a brand or a product, whether that's share of wallet, top line revenue, any kind of growth metric, ROAS is not your friend. You cannot keep growing and ratchet up your ROAS at the same time. And we hear this a lot as an agency is, okay, our objective is to grow, but we need a higher ROAS. And those two things just are not compatible. You'd need to sacrifice a bit of ROAS to achieve a growth outcome. And conversely, if you want to maintain profitability or grow profitability, you need to accept you're not going to grow as quickly. So this is again, it's a foundational thing. When you explain it, people kind of get it, but there is still a lot of confusion around ROAS being, the one metric to rule them all. And it is not. It just happens to be very easy to calculate, very easy to compare. And so it's front and center on all of your advertising dashboards. The CMO and the CFO and the CEO know about that metric and they ask about it. It's very visible and it's easy to compare and calculate. That's the benefit, but many brands get hung up on that. So that's the one out of 2 ways that brands are doing it now that's not working for them.
So really quick, it's too funny. We just did a dinner in New York week before last, and the title of it was, "Is ROAS killing your digital marketing?"
Love it.
Because I completely agree. But you nailed it. What is it? It's a metric that's delivered to you. So you don't have to go figure out, right? It's just like handed over to you. It's easy to explain to an executive team that's still trying to wrap their head around digital as a whole in a lot of cases. No, you have, digitally native companies that get it from the start and the founders do it, right? Those are the ones that have moved on off from ROAS, right? The one thing everybody's looking for, and if you could develop this next, it would be great. Multi-touch attribution tool that's accurate. That's like a $1 billion gold mine right there.
Yep. If I could click my fingers and invent something for you, Aaron, I would. But that is hard. Although I think we might go off on a little tangent here, but
that's fine.
We're starting to use Amazon Marketing Cloud a lot, and that is very promising in terms of actually being able to track across Amazon DSP and PPC, actually looking at the path to purchase and where, that first and last touch within the Amazon ecosystem. But you can also ingest D2C, your own 1P data into there as well, and see you won't ever be able to get across other walled gardens or other retailers, but you can certainly start to see multi-touch journey through Amazon and your own first party data. So that is exciting. That's like solving 50% of the problem, I think.
So you're taking first party data from your direct consumer site.
Yep.
And putting it into the marketing cloud, and it's kicking you out. So then are you able to then use that to target the same exact demographic who's converting on your own site via advertising on any of the Amazon platforms?
So you can already, you've been able to do that with DSP for a long time. You can actually use your 1P data and target those customers on Amazon. You're talking about there's two different directions. There's one you can do that with the DSP, bring over that 1P data and target those customers, or negatively target them. So let's say you really, really don't want any kind of cannibalization, which I think is a pipe dream, but you want to blacklist all of your D2C customers from being advertised on Amazon. You can do that, or you can do it the other way around. So that's with DSP advertising. Amazon Marketing Cloud, or AMC, because we love all these acronyms. That's more
happens
of
to be my initials as well. AMC.
Oh, there you go. So of course it's gonna work. AMC is more of a analytics solution, reporting that will actually show you, okay, you've got a customer who you served an ad to through Amazon DSP, and they ended up buying on your D2C site, or vice versa. Or we saw, or that this cohort, we served them ads for Father's Day, and then a lot of them ended up purchasing on Prime Day instead, through a paid search campaign. So those are the kind of things that we're figuring out, is that then you can actually get a lot more scientific around the return, even though I just said don't like using ROAS for everything, but you can get a little bit more scientific around the return of some of those higher funnel ad campaigns. And I know that he won't mind me calling him out, but John Denny, who's the VP of commerce at Carvu Ventures, and they own a lot of brands like Vital Protein, Whoop, Hip Peas, some others, other sort of good for you brands. His whole thesis, and the hill that John Denny will die on, is top of funnel always, and top of funnel drives sales. So, and he's lent into this really hard over the last 10 years that he's been running e-commerce, because he sees in his own data that top of funnel advertising is actually performance advertising. And I think that with something like Amazon Marketing Cloud, that thesis can be proven, especially for the types of brands that he is that are in their portfolio are all challenger brands and like fairly new concepts in the market. So they have to do a lot of awareness marketing, and that ultimately drives results. With Amazon Marketing Cloud, I think you'd be able to prove that thesis very quickly and sort of irrefutably.
This might be another whole podcast, which then begets the technology, the ad tech that's got to be out there that you have to have in-house. You can't do this without ad tech at the end of the day, right? It's just,
I would say money. So. Yes, I do agree. We use a lot of technology in our practice. I'd say you do need to have great ad tech and a tech stack that's working for you. You also need someone to interpret that and do something with it. And I think that is, there are a lot of promises out there around technology and AI, but ultimately, whether that person is brand side or an agency, you need someone who can interpret what that data is telling you and move quickly to react to it.
Yeah.
This model that I was just explaining, the funnel model, that is not a filter in an ad tech product right now. And maybe it should be, and maybe it will be. But right now, the way that we're setting this up at Acadia is by tagging campaigns with those funnel stages and reporting on it that way. And there's still a lot of, I was just speaking with our PPC team last week, there's still, some edge cases of, well, this particular type of campaign it could be brand defense or it could be something else. And so how do we tag that? And there's pros and cons to each. And then we come back to the objective of the client and look at it through that lens. So there is absolutely a space for technology. We would not be nearly as efficient or strategic without using technology, but you still need to have someone with their hands on the wheel.
Yeah. So this will be the last question I'll throw at you. What are you most excited about?
Oh, that's one of my favorite questions. You've been listening to my podcast, haven't you?
Yeah. So just so everybody knows, like e-commerce brain trust is the fantastic. Yep. If you enjoy the conversation with Kiri today, listen to her all the time. She has fantastic contacts across the digital landscape. Is just passionate about the space.
Thank you. And to be fair, to give credit where it's due, I always ask, what are you excited about? And what have you changed your mind about? But I stole those questions from Tim Ferriss. Okay. So there's nothing new under the sun. I'm not not the person that came up with that. I'm excited. I'm very excited about Amazon Marketing Cloud. We're just scratching the surface on this, but I really think that it can help to prove out some of these concepts that we're talking about, like the importance of top of funnel, when that seems to get ignored in favor of ROAS a lot of the time. I think that is wrong, and I'm desperate to prove it. So that's what I'm going to be looking at.
So what would you change your mind on?
What would I change my mind on? I've flip-flopped about live streaming as a growth opportunity. First, I thought it was really exciting when it was first launched on Amazon. Then they didn't really do anything with it. Now I'm excited about it again because we're seeing great results, not from brands doing a live stream themselves, but actually partnering with influencers or publishers and doing live streams and seeing great results through that.
Yeah. Have you checked out Firework at all? I know they have a lot of partnerships because they have now platforms like the Walmarts and everything jumping on with the live stream and then enabling it, but different than Amazon did. I'm pumped for live streaming. Cool. Yeah, I'll connect you with Jason over there. So as we kind of wrap up here, would love to have you back if there's other topics that you think are relevant. Never hesitate to send them over. And the last thing is, so the Colgate Palmolive, you mentioned, so Todd Hassenfeld over there is awesome as we wrap up. Mm-hmm. I don't know if you know him. He has one of my favorite lines is his team playing Tinder with data providers. And so
wait, explain that.
So you know how there's all these different like data. So for his data team, there's so many, there's the stock lines and the profiteros and right. Well, there's so much data for the big companies. They have it all, but you can craft that data to tell whatever story you want.
Got it.
Right. So it's like, left. Oh, I like this one today. Right. I'm going to keep that data set. So that's an upcoming podcast, but you'd mentioned Colgate Palmolive.
I see some limitations to this analogy, but anyway.
Well, Kiri, it's been an absolute pleasure. Again, thanks to everybody who listened in today. It's just incredible. Honor to be on this digital journey together. Hope everybody has a fantastic day. And don't hesitate to send any topics. You can always reach out to me, Aaron, AARON at bwgconnect.com. If you have topics or people you'd like to have us have on the podcast. Thanks again, Kiri. It's been awesome.
Thanks, Aaron.